Have you ever felt like you're operating on a different frequency from everyone else? You notice the real motives behind polite smiles, the anxieties people try to hide, and the social masks everyone else seems to miss. You pick up on the slight shift in a person's tone, the fleeting expression that betrays their true feelings, or the unspoken tension in a room that's so thick you could almost cut it with a knife. But this gift, it can feel less like a superpower and more like a burden. It's a constant, low-humming awareness. You just can't switch off. The ideas of the Swiss psychiatrist, Carl Jung, a man who dedicated his life to the depths of the human psyche, well, they offer a powerful lens to understand this experience. Now, while Jung didn't define a specific syndrome of, say, excess perception, his work on consciousness, introversion, and alienation, it really helps explain why the ability to see what others don't can lead to profound psychological exhaustion and, well, a painful sense of isolation. Today, we're exploring 5 hidden dangers of this deep perception, drawing on themes from Jungian thought to understand the risks that come with seeing the world's hidden truths. More importantly, we'll explore how to navigate this difficult path, not by seeing less, but by learning to see more wisely. Because within this framework, this ability, while challenging, isn't a flaw. It's a calling to a deeper form of consciousness. So if you've ever felt that you see too much, that your sensitivity is both a gift and a wound, then this is for you. This is validation that you're not strange, you're not broken, and you are certainly not alone. Now let's get into the first danger that anyone who sees too much will inevitably face. The first and most immediate danger is a state of profound psychological exhaustion. This isn't the kind of tired you feel after a long day at work. No. It's a deep, soul-level weariness that comes from constantly processing information others don't even notice. Imagine your mind is a highly sensitive radar system, always scanning, analyzing, and interpreting every subtle signal in your environment. While others hear a conversation, you hear the subtext. While others see a smile, you see the faint muscular strain that hints at the pain it's trying to hide. This constant influx of data is neurologically and emotionally taxing. Modern research on the highly sensitive person, or HSP, a concept developed by psychologist Elaine Aron in the 1990s, shows that some people's brains genuinely process sensory information more deeply. Every interaction, it becomes an exercise in deep analysis. You notice the mismatch between someone's words and their body language, or you feel the emotional residue left in a room long after an argument has ended. This isn't a choice. It's just how your brain is wired. This exhaustion is made worse by, what you could call the burden of translation. You're constantly translating a high-definition, multi-layered reality for a world that just seems to operate in standard definition. In every moment, you have to decide what's safe to acknowledge and what you have to ignore. Do you bring up that flicker of sadness you saw in your friend's eyes? Or do you just play along with their cheerful facade to keep the peace? This internal negotiation, it's a constant energy drain. To maintain social harmony, you might even start to gaslight yourself, telling yourself you're reading too much into things, or maybe being too sensitive. This performance of ignorance, it's one of the most draining acts of all. Why? Because it's a denial of your very own reality. This psychological fatigue, it can show up in physical ways. It leads to chronic stress, anxiety, burnout, and a desperate need for solitude just to recharge. Social gatherings, for you, can just feel like running a marathon. You leave feeling depleted and overstimulated, having spent the entire time managing an invisible switchboard of social and emotional data. This isn't just about being an introvert, no. It's about being an information processing powerhouse without an off switch. The sheer volume of input can leave you feeling constantly overwhelmed. Not because you're unstable, but because your system is just completely overloaded. This exhaustion, this is the foundation upon which all the other dangers are built. This brings us to the second, and perhaps most painful danger. The profound, inescapable loneliness of feeling like an outsider. This isn't just about being alone in a room, It's a kind of existential alienation. You can be surrounded by people you love, yet still feel a huge chasm of separation, almost as if you're speaking a different language entirely. This is the loneliness that comes from perceiving a reality that's fundamentally different from the one most people acknowledge. This sense of alienation, it's a theme Carl Jung actually explored. He wrote about the process of individuation. That's the journey to becoming one's true self. And honestly, it's often a very lonely path. Societies and all our social groups, they really rely on a set of unspoken agreements and convenient fictions just to function smoothly. We agree not to talk about the elephant in the room, right? And we agree to take people at face value. But the perceptive person, by their very nature, they struggle to fully participate in this. You see the family tensions that everyone pretends don't exist. You see the hypocrisy in a leader everyone else admires. Or, that unspoken pain in a marriage that just looks perfect on Instagram. Your awareness alone can actually feel disruptive because it silently questions that shared reality. And when you try to talk about what you see, you're often met with denial, confusion, or even outright hostility. People might say you're too negative or that you're creating drama. But what they're really saying is, please, stop making me look at things I don't want to see. This constant invalidation can make you question your own sanity. Am I the only one who sees this? Am I going crazy? This self-doubt is a hallmark of the perceptive person's journey. You're given a clear lens, but you live in a world that seems to prefer a blurry one, and you're pressured to agree that the blur is the truth. Conversations can feel shallow because you're hungry for a depth that others aren't willing to access. You long for a connection where you don't have to edit your perceptions. These moments of true recognition are so rare, they feel like finding an oasis in a desert, and their scarcity just highlights the loneliness of your everyday life. This is the tragedy of the outsider. Your gift is the very thing that isolates you. You become an exile in your own community, not for doing anything wrong, but simply for what you see. The third danger is one of the most socially risky. When you see things others don't, you unintentionally become a mirror, reflecting people's own hidden issues back at them. And as the popular saying goes, many people would rather shatter the mirror than look at their own reflection. This experience, it's perfectly explained by Jung's concept of the shadow. That's the unconscious part of our personality, where we kind of stuff all the traits we don't like about ourselves. We all have a shadow, but the perceptive person, they can often sense the shadows of others. Things like the repressed anger behind forced politeness, the deep insecurity under a layer of arrogance, or the hidden envy in a compliment. When you perceive someone's shadow, even if you say nothing, it just makes them deeply uncomfortable. Their immediate defense mechanism? Well, that's often projection. Instead of acknowledging that uncomfortable trait in themselves, they project it onto you. This is why, perceptive people often become scapegoats. If someone is hiding their own anger, they'll accuse you of being angry. If they're being manipulative, they'll insist that you are the one with a hidden agenda. You become the problem in the family, or the difficult one in the friend group. And it's not because you're creating issues. No. It's because your very presence is exposing the issues that are already there. Jung once wrote, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. But that requires a lot of self-awareness, which most people haven't developed. So their irritation is just aimed outward at the person who triggered it. You find yourself tangled in conflicts that have nothing to do with you, blamed for feelings that aren't yours. This makes relationships tricky. You learn to tread carefully and soften your words to avoid triggering this defensive reaction. But often, it happens anyway. The danger here is twofold. First, the social risk of being constantly misunderstood and scapegoated. Second, and more insidious, is the psychological danger. If you're constantly told you're the problem, you might start to believe it. This can erode your self-esteem and your trust in your own mind, making you think your clarity is a destructive flaw instead of a gift. While the other dangers come from the outside world, this one's an internal poison, the temptation to fall into either superiority or cynicism. When you consistently see things that others miss, it's dangerously easy to develop a sense of psychological inflation or a deep-seated contempt for humanity. First, let's talk about the superiority trap. When your predictions about people and situations keep proving true, it's natural to start feeling like you just know better. You see the denial and short-sightedness that drives so much of human behavior, and a part of you might just start to feel, above it all. Jung called this inflation. It's a state where the ego just gets puffed up, with a sense of godlike knowledge, and, losing its humility. It feels good for a moment, like a relief from the pain of being misunderstood. But it's a poison in disguise. The moment you believe you're superior, you just cut off any chance of real connection. Arrogance becomes your fortress. But it's also your prison. You lose empathy for the very people you see so clearly, forgetting that their blindness is just part of, the messy human condition. The other side of this coin is a corrosive cynicism. After you've seen enough hypocrisy, manipulation, and willful ignorance, it's easy to lose faith in people altogether. Every kind act looks like it has a selfish motive. Every person seems like a walking collection of their very worst impulses. This cynical worldview feels like a shield. If you expect the worst, you can't be disappointed. But it's a bleak and joyless way to live. And this is actually just another form of blindness. You become so focused on the hidden darkness that you can no longer see the light that actually coexists with it. Both superiority and cynicism are internal corruptions of your gift. They twist your clear perception into a weapon of judgment or a shield of despair. Navigating this, it requires a conscious effort to stay grounded. It means remembering that you have a shadow, too. It requires actively looking for the good, even when the bad is so much more obvious. To see clearly is a gift. But to see clearly and still choose compassion, that is wisdom. The final hidden danger is perhaps the most agonizing, the burden of seeing pain, dysfunction, and looming disaster that you're powerless to stop. Your perception gives you a front-row seat to the quiet tragedies unfolding in the lives of those around you, but it rarely gives you the power to intervene. You see the destructive patterns in a friend's relationship long before they do. You sense the deep unhappiness in a family member who insists everything is fine. You might see a crisis coming at work, but your warnings, they're brushed aside. And in these moments, you're faced with a terrible choice. If you speak up, you risk being attacked or alienated. But if you stay silent, you feel complicit, watching the inevitable train wreck happen in slow motion. This creates a state of profound moral distress. It's like being a firefighter who sees the smoke but has no water. This feeling of helplessness, it's a unique kind of suffering, really, where you're wounded by the knowledge of a pain you just can't fix. And this is especially tough for perceptive people who often feel a strong sense of responsibility because you see the problem, right? You feel like you should solve it. This can feed into what we call a savior complex, an impulse, to rescue others from their own choices. But here's the thing. People can't be saved from their own journey. A person has to be ready to face their own truth, and no amount of outside insight really can force that. The emotional toll of this is immense. It can lead to guilt, frustration, and a deep existential sorrow. You might even withdraw from people because watching them walk toward a cliff that you've been pointing out for months, it's just too painful. The lesson here is incredibly difficult. Your role isn't always to fix, but sometimes just to bear witness with compassion without letting it destroy you. So we've journeyed through the exhaustion, the loneliness, the projections, the cynicism, and the helplessness. It sounds pretty bleak, but this is where the journey takes a critical turn. Jungian thought doesn't just diagnose the problem. It offers a path forward. The ultimate goal is what Jung called individuation. Individuation is the process of becoming fully yourself by integrating the conscious and unconscious parts of your mind. For a highly perceptive person, this isn't just a self-help project. It's a survival strategy. It's the art of learning to use your perception consciously, rather than letting it overwhelm you. So what does this path look like? First, it starts with radical self-acceptance. Your perception isn't a flaw, it's an advanced feature. You aren't too sensitive or too intense. You are exactly as you were meant to be. Accepting this is the first step to reclaiming your power. Second, it requires developing strong psychological boundaries. You have to learn to distinguish between your own emotions and the emotions you absorb from others. Practices like mindfulness and conscious self-reflection can help. Simply asking, "Is this feeling mine, or did I pick it up from someone else?" can be a powerful tool. This allows you to observe the data around you without letting it flood your own system. Third, this path demands that you do your own shadow work. It's easy to see the shadows of others, but it's much harder and more important to face your own. By doing your own inner work, you approach others with more humility and compassion. You realize their struggles are a reflection of the same human condition you face. Fourth, you have to find a constructive outlet for your insights. Perception without expression leads to internal pressure. This might mean channeling your insights into creative work, like art or writing. It could mean choosing a profession, like therapy or research, where deep perception is an asset. Or it could simply mean finding a small circle of trusted friends, where you can speak your truth without fear. Finally, integration involves cultivating what Jung called the transcendent function. This is about holding the tension of opposites, the pain and the beauty, the light and the shadow, without collapsing into one or the other. It's about trusting that a new, wiser perspective can emerge from that tension. The goal isn't to see less, it's to build a psychological container strong enough to hold what you see, turning overwhelming perception into integrated wisdom. The journey of integration isn't one you have to walk alone. In fact, one of the best things you can do is find your community, other perceptive people who get it. If the ideas we've explored today resonate with you, I invite you to subscribe and share your own experiences in the comments. Reading the stories of others who see the world like you do is a powerful antidote to the loneliness we've talked about. Your story matters, and it could be exactly what someone else needs to hear to feel less alone. We began this journey by acknowledging that seeing what others don't can feel like a heavy burden. We've walked through the shadows of this gift, the exhaustion, the alienation, the projections, the temptations, and the helplessness. Those dangers are real, but the ultimate message from a Jungian perspective is one of profound hope. Your heightened perception is not a random affliction. It points toward an evolution of consciousness. Individuals like you are the ones who sense what needs to be healed, what truths need to be spoken, and what new possibilities are waiting to be born. In a way, you are the immune system of the collective. The pain you've experienced is not a sign that you're broken, it is the price of your clarity. It's what some in-depth psychology call a sacred wound, forging you into a wounded healer, someone who, by navigating their own pain, develops the capacity to guide others. So don't wish for your perception to be taken away. Don't pray to be blind like everyone else. The danger isn't in seeing too much, it's in failing to build a conscious relationship with what you see. The task is to embrace your sight, to honor your sensitivity, and to take on the sacred work of becoming whole. You weren't born to conform, you were born to awaken. The world desperately needs people who can see in the dark. It desperately needs you.